We're here for it, yeah. We're here for it, yeah. We're here for it, yeah. We're here for it, yeah.
Hey guys, it's Pamela from the SheHH podcast team, and welcome back to SheHH, where we interview women in the Christian music from all over the world. Today is bittersweet because we have our final and last episode of series 2 of the podcast. We will be speaking to Canadian singer-songwriter and visual artist Jaimie Poon. She'll be speaking about God tricking her into her career, finding her unique sound, and also finding healing after overcoming an eating disorder. Jaimie is honestly an amazing artist and the perfect person to close this series of the podcast. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and on TikTok at SheHH Podcast. So, Jaimie, thank you so much for joining us on the SheHH podcast. I'm so excited to speak to you, honestly. Can you just introduce yourself to us and let us know who you are?
Yeah, for sure. And thanks again for having me on. So my name is Jaimie, and I'm a Canadian singer-songwriter based in Mississauga, Ontario. And yeah, I mean, I'm a very emotional person, and so I just love to just write out my emotions and process everything through song. And song is also my sort of King David way of connecting with God, being super honest with Him. And yeah, and I also released an EP, my first debut EP in May. So yeah, I'm excited to talk about that.
Yeah, we're gonna go into it because like that EP is. I was just saying to you like before this, I was listening to it and I was like, oh my gosh, this is good. Like I wasn't surprised good, but I was like, this is good. This is really good. Like,
Praise God.
but I mean, I want to speak about the like genre of music or the style of music you create. You're a really interesting artist because you've kind of taken like a classical, almost jazzy sound, but made it very modern. And I would love to know like where that came about from. Like, how did you develop your style of music?
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that because like a lot of my friends who like when they first meet me, they don't connect. Like they tell me, oh, like Jaimie, we don't see you as someone who loves jazz, alternative R&B. They're just like, oh, you probably like classical music or like pop music or whatever, which I do love. But yeah, I've just always really gravitated towards jazz, especially with like softer voices. So I'd say, I mean, like I grew up classically doing the classically trained piano route, and I really loved Sarah Bareilles and like Birdie because I mean, again, it's just the emotion that they could portray through song. Um, and I think the style that I really connected with jazz was when I discovered Cream Bailey Ray. Just like I think I was in like fifth grade or something, and I was like, wow, like this really really resonates with me.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember just really loving jazz, but not really knowing how to like explain my musical taste.
Yeah.
And and like fast forward to like during the pandemic, I've just been like I listened to so much music, but particularly artists like Sam Wills. He's like a UK based artist, like does a lot of amazing neo soul tunes and also like Moonchild. And I really like in terms of like female singer songwriters like in the genre of jazz, like I love Ravina and Amber Nafrin again from Moonchild. So yeah, like all these artists, I just loved how soulful
Mm-hmm.
their music was, and I think that I really connected with that. And um, oh, I also remember Stevie Wonder's also a really big, and I think because like me starting out with piano, I would like it was really weird again to call myself a singer songwriter. I started out more of like an instrumentalist, thinking more about chord progressions instead of like like melody and lyrics, and so like that had come later. Um, yeah, so like I love the soulful music, and I'd be listening to so much of this music and wondering, is there any worship music in this
Wow.
style? And I would feel almost bad for listening to Moonchild because I'm like, well, it's not really like they don't sing about Jesus, and so I just remember like just asking God, you know, like where can I find these artists, and he just put that on my heart. Okay, you can. I mean, God is so creative. He's the most
Yeah.
creative being that we know. Genesis 1, you see that he's like so prolific and he's organized at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, so I just felt that like God was telling me, not to put him in a box, and he's like, be like as creative as I've made you in with this genre
Yeah.
or style of music that you're doing, which is different, but I like it. So
I think it suits
yeah.
you as well, and I like that you like said, "Hey, I don't think I'm seeing many people do this. Why don't I be the change that I want to see?" You know, and I think that's really
Yeah.
cool.
Oh, thank you. And like even when it comes to lyrics, I mean, um, I grew up really loving Bethel and like Hillsong songs, but I found that like the lyrics are sort of repetitive at times. Like, okay, we've been through the fire. God's love is like a flood, like a storm. Okay, we know that. Can we use a different analogy? So,
Yeah, no,
um,
it's a worship song when there's something about water. There's something
yeah, I
about
know.
water.
Yeah, yeah,
Fire.
the elements. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So.
You're so right. You mentioned that you first were an instrumentalist, playing piano, classically trained. At what point were you like, wait, I'm a singer too, I'm a songwriter, this is also what I want to do? What was that stage?
Yeah, that's a really good question because I like God tricked me into into leading worship. So yeah, started out classical, and I remember around I think it was 10th grade, where so like my Bible teacher, like I went to a Christian high school, and like my Bible teacher was hoping to form a worship band. And so I remember him like first recruiting me, and at first I was like, "Oh, I'm only going to play keys."
Hmm.
And so that band didn't happen, but then at the same time I had joined like a new church, and like that youth group was also wanting to like start like a worship band.
Hmm.
And so I remember, yeah, like my mentor Joy, like she was just like, "Okay, I'll like give you the sheet music, like I'll still reading the notes." And she's like, "But I would like you to lead like a song or two." So it just like started from there, like me singing while on the keys. And then and I just loved worshiping Jesus, honestly, just in the quiet place, like on my own. Um, and I think it's from that place where I just was like, God just like filled me so much with like His Spirit and like the courage to go out and lead, that when I was like up on stage, it didn't really feel like I was on stage. It just felt like I was worshiping God from that authentic place. And so that was when I started to like really, put myself out there, sing in front of the congregation. Um, and then when it comes to writing songs, so again, God tricked me into this again.
I'm
So
seeing
it
a
was
theme here. I'm seeing a theme.
yeah, yeah. He just like, but he's great that way. Yeah, he doesn't pressure us that way. Yeah, just tricks us. But anyway, so so I just graduated from university. I think this, yeah, 2016. So I graduated, and then I just had so much time, sort of like I felt like I was just floating around trying to figure out life, and I applied to so many jobs and was just waiting to hear back. And then with all this time, I just spent so much time with the Lord again in that secret place. And then it would be in these worship sessions where songs would accidentally sort of just come out. And then I thought to myself, like, one day I was like, oh, like I realized that I haven't really been writing and like recording these songs. Like I need to like make sure these are some really great ideas. I want to like come back to those. So yeah, I just started writing from basically like those really intense worship sessions.
Hmm.
So yeah, and I think it was like 2018 or something when so I had written Patience of Light, which is the first song that made it official, that I was like, yes, I'm gonna do this and like put it out into the world.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I think that was like the first time where I felt like there was something very special like about this particular song. And there are some songs that are meant for, just for yourself as the artist, and like just between like you and God. And then there's some songs where it's like, God is like gifting me the song, and then he's handing it to me to gift to the world. So yeah, that's how Patience of Light happened. And I remember I was so nervous the first time I was in the recording booth, but good memories though.
Oh, that's so nice to hear. I mean, I was literally going to ask how it turned it from being a songwriter and writing these from the place of like worship and being like, oh yeah, this is between me and God. He likes them. I like them. Cool. To I'm an actual gospel artist. is now releasing this to the world. Anyone can access this online. Anyone can listen to this wherever in the world they are. Like, what was that jump? Like, what was the thing that made you be like, this is the next step for me, and this is where God wants me?
Right. So I mean, I like most artists, we have this like singer songwriter like acoustic performance like on our voice notes,
Yeah.
like on voice memo. So just like I just had a bunch of like song ideas, and I remember just like scrolling through like these songs, and then I stopped at Patience of Light, and immediately I felt Holy Spirit just convicting me. He's just like, so are you gonna do anything with this particular song? And I told Father, I am so sorry. I know I need to get on it. And so I think it was a year gap from me finishing the song and then deciding to,
Wow.
find a producer to, get going on that project. Um, it was all in faith, I think. And also, I feel so blessed because God has always surrounded me with really creative people. So, I mean, I teach piano as well. And so, again, which is one of the things that God tricked me into. And so like at this music school I was at, there were I mean like a lot of my coworkers were also like writing and recording as well. So just to like uh I got a lot of great advice from them, and then they always encouraged me. They're like, yeah, Jaimie, like just go for it. And yeah, because like you don't know until you try it,
Yeah.
sort of thing. So yeah, basically it was like God convicting me, and then him surrounding me with
With
like the
people.
best
Yeah.
creative people. So
Oh, that's amazing. I mean, you've said it multiple times that God's tricked you, but I feel like that He's realized that that's the way to get you to do the things that we need you to do, you know. Because if He hadn't
yeah.
tricked you, we might have never heard this music, you know, and people would need it. People need it.
Yeah, yeah, it's worth it.
So I'm really excited to find out more about you as a person, you know, you as the human being, Jaimie. You kind of talk about your three distinct identities as being Chinese, as being Canadian, and being a lover of Christ. That's like the three C's. Can we make this a thing? The three C's?
That's true. Yeah, come on.
How,
See, see, see.
how and in what ways have those three identities kind of formed who you are today?
This is a great question. I think, well, I'll talk about Jesus first because literally, like, that's even where my creativity and
Wow.
I don't know, just like oh yeah, like literally, it's like yeah, like without Jesus, I just wouldn't be able to um actually be able to. Again, I mentioned at the beginning of this interview that I'm quite an emotional person, and yeah, like without Jesus, I wouldn't be able to sort of navigate life
Yeah.
and figure out, like the intensity of the feelings that
Mm,
I have, and also just we can talk about this a little bit more too, how I had gone through an eating disorder in 2014, and gone through some negative experiences, but like Jesus has always pulled me through and like been so present in all of those.
mm,
And um, the music on this EP just really reflects all those experiences of God being so real. um, yeah, so that's the first C. And me being Canadian, I mean, I was born in Mississauga, which is like a very yeah, it's like a very quiet city. But I really love living in Mississauga. Like we have so much nature around us, and like I went to like the University of Toronto, Mississauga, and like literally it's a school in a forest. So like we have like deer visiting us,
oh
and
wow.
like geese. Yeah, yeah, and like we'd have like professors feeding the deer, which I don't think they're supposed to, but that's what they did. But I just remember being so like, um, being very comforted just being in Mississauga because like it's also a very safe community, very inclusive. So I never really experienced like racism. Like maybe a little, like as kids, like 'cause, kids are kids, but like really, I just felt like even, and I was never faced with any like sexist remarks. Like no one judged me for like being a girl. Yeah, so I think if anything, growing up in Mississauga has really enabled me in my creativity, and particularly like because I'm a very soft spoken, not like, at least when I was growing up, I was super soft spoken and just terrified to like even speak. But I think growing up in a very quiet neighborhood in a quiet city has shown me that there's actually so much power to softer voices.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, and also like even because like sometimes like there's this like stereotype of an artist that like, oh, they have to be like big and showy, but I think that there's so much beauty in expressing as an artist like in like through a softer voice and through humility. Like I just feel like there's so much power to that, and like there's a saying that with a whisper that you lean in closer. And so I would hope that my audiences can lean in closer when
That's so
when
good.
yeah. Um, yeah, and then the third C, me being Chinese. So I really thought about this because I'm very whitewashed. So like my parents, they came from Hong Kong, and so like they always speak to me in Cantonese, but I don't know why I was just so stubborn as a kid to only speak in English, and I so regret that. Like I don't know why. I just didn't want to speak in
It's
Cantonese
not
back to
just
them.
you. A lot of first men did it. I did it as well. Like a lot of us did it, where it was like they speak to us and we respond in English, and then eventually it was just like, oh, forget it, it's fine. Speak to you in English then. So
Right. I mean, we like totally regret it later in our
literally,
20s. We're
you're
like,
like, I
oh,
could be bilingual by now. I could be bilingual. Yeah, I get you.
right. But yeah, like well, my parents. I mean, you can hear that. My mom, you can hear on the first track, "Name My Dear," and like my dad, who's also speaking Cantonese with me on, I think it's the fourth track.
Is that the
The
interlude one?
Yeah, the interlude. Yeah, so definitely my parents have contributed to my music and have always supported me. And I mean, like typically. Like Asian parents, like they're just like, they come from the background of we want all of our children to be doctors.
Yeah.
So that didn't quite happen. But oh, sorry, I feel like I'm sort of like diverting from the
No,
question.
it's
But
fine.
yeah, I I guess it's sort of uh, I'm just glad again that I grew up in Mississauga and it's just so diverse that like I'm a little quote unquote colorblind. So like
Mm-hmm.
um, I don't know. I still have to explore that, like how me being Chinese affects my art. In the EP, it's obvious though that with
Yeah.
my parents speaking Cantonese, but yeah, that's something I have to explore a little more.
And it's interesting that your parents are so supportive as well, because I think a lot of us from like ethnic backgrounds, it's a little bit more difficult when you say you want to do something creative as a thing, you know. And on top of
Yeah.
that, being Christians as well, like it's not like people will
Mhm.
think, oh yeah, them being Christians makes it easier. It doesn't necessarily. So it's interesting and also just amazing to hear that they're really supportive of what you do and even took part in the EP.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is funny because I didn't really like even having like my mom and my dad involved in the EP. Like that was sort of like a last minute thought that happened while I was recording. I was like, you know what, this makes sense because like that, like they inspired sort of like the songs and like the title. So yeah, they're very happy to be a part of it.
I mean, I might go on to the EP because I feel like we've been touching on it. So I think it would be nice to kind of have you intro what the EP is about. I'm always of the mind that if an artist creates a body of work, creates a project, and puts it in a certain order, your first listen has to be in that order. It can't be like in a random order because they've done it deliberately, like there's a story. And I would love for you to tell us the story behind this EP and the heart that you have and desire for people to leave after listening to it with.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so the EP is written from Matthew 5, chapter 8. So, like in the Beatitudes, verse 8, it says, "Blessed are those who are pure in heart, for they will see God." And um, so so after going back to like my music journey, so I had released Patience of Light, and I really wanted to create like a longer body of work. And I was like, oh, I want to probably not do a full album because I just want to start small. So I had always wanted to do an EP since finishing Patience of Light. And then I had released my second single Kindness, which is kindness without the D in it. And like a lot of my friends ask me, they're like, Jaimie, you're like, for me, like I'm like the grammar police. So I really don't like this trend. of, you know how nowadays like all these youngins are like not capitalizing their letters. Like for instance, like Olivia Rodrigo, she's like good for
Yeah,
you. Like that father's
like
name.
that's wrong. That's wrong.
Yeah, I know that's wrong. That's wrong. So like that's why my friends are like, oh, like why would you spell kindness without the D in it?
I thought it was
So
keenness.
oh yeah, that's the thing. Like it looks like it should be pronounced as kidness, but like I thought like again this is okay. I'll explain.
Explain.
So so this song kindness is was written for a friend who had unfortunately throughout her life she grew up with an abusive father, and I've known her since we were both in the fifth grade, and I just wanted to write this song for her to let her know that she's not alone. And because like it's not only myself but like my family had actually walked with her and like
Mm.
and her mom like through that really difficult time. Um, and with the name kindness without the D. So it's actually my middle name Ines, Ines, hidden inside of that title, and also it's part of my friend's name in the song title as well. So it's just like a way for me to like let her know like okay, I'm in this with you, and I want to get like I want you to experience God's kindness through this song. So that's where the idea Ine sort of came from. Um, yeah, I wanted to give like a little Easter egg
I
to
like
my
that.
friends, like saying like, yeah, I have an EP next, and it has like my middle name Ine in there. Um, and yeah, so for some reason, like it just like I was working with like the same like producers since like Patience of Light and like working with them to release Kindness, and for some reason it just never really happened doing
Mm.
an EP with them, just like time wise or like schedules, and like they have like their own projects. Um, but I think the timing was really good because I was able to work with Steven, who like did an amazing job like playing on all the tracks, and
Mm.
you know he like mixed and mastered everything, and yeah, just so glad that God had chosen this brother in Christ who really understood the meaning behind the project. Um, so like going back to the name Ine, I'd really wanted when I released Kindness, like I really wanted to write an EP that was about you know me experiencing like all these you know some traumatic experiences, but like God revealing himself to me through those and purifying me through those situations. um yeah, I had like more than 15 songs. I think I was considering to go on the EP, and so like it was just like
Wow.
sifting. Yeah, a lot of songs in the vault. But yeah, so with the name Ine, so it's like my Chinese name, like Punjin Yin. So like the Yin part, my parents,
Oh
to the
no.
best of their ability, they took Yin and then add es to the end to like Englishify my Chinese name. So,
Okay.
but the way they pronounced it was Yenis, and I was like, no, that's not happening, mom and dad. Why would you decide to pronounce my middle name Yenis? That's so like, And then I remember in like ninth grade, I know, right? It's like, and like kids made fun of it, like growing up. And then in ninth grade, I was sitting in French class, and then we were talking about like French pronunciations of names, and then we talked about like
Mm-hmm.
Agnes, and then a variation of Agnes was Ine. And so I remember perking up and being like, "Oh, okay, so that's the same spelling as my middle name, so I'm gonna pronounce my middle name as Ine instead of Venus." And then a couple years later, which is like yeah, a couple years later, I find out that the name Ine means pure and holy in like Greek and French, and my German friend
Oh,
said it's also
it
in
worked
German.
out.
I know, right? It's just like all interconnected. And another interesting fact is that my Chinese name Punjin Yin means faith that comes from the word.
Wow.
And I mean, you can hear this in like Papa's interlude that at the time when my parents just were trying to decide my Chinese name, they had visited someone who specializes in Chinese baby names, and like apparently the certain number of brush strokes indicates how lucky the name will be. So like
Oh,
that's how they picked. my Chinese name Poon Yin. So like the fact that it's like, and then of course now my parents are Christian, so just how God really connected all through my life, just the significance of his name. And the expression and name idea that comes from my mom, because I mean she has great mothering senses. She knows if
Aw.
something's off even when like I won't like I won't be saying anything, and she'll like barge open like the door to our room, and she'll be like, "Hello, my dear, how are you?" And then she knows that something is up. So yeah, that's why she's on the first track. Yeah, so in a nutshell, a very big nutshell, that's what a name idea is. Yeah, the title and like the song and the EP. Yeah, what it's about.
Oh, I love that. I mean, I didn't know any of this. So just hearing the color behind the story, like behind the music. Oh, I love it. So exciting. And
Oh,
the way that God has
thank
been
you.
in it from the very beginning. Like you even touched on the fact that your parents weren't Christians when they had chosen the name, but it still fit with the whole narrative of like Jesus. I love it. I actually love it
Yeah.
so much. Um,
Oh, thank you.
I
Yeah.
wanted
Oh, sorry. If I realized I forgot to add another thing. So like when I had introduced like this idea of like a name idea to like my first producer,
yeah,
like he was also my music mentor. He was like, "Oh, like that fits your personality and just like your heart for like seeing God in that pure
wow.
lens." So yeah. So
Oh, I love that. Even a name that speaks of you, actually. That's amazing.
yeah. Thank you.
You mentioned something that we weren't going to speak about because I didn't know about, but I really think that if you would like to speak about it, this would be an amazing platform for it. One of the things I mentioned when I spoke to you was that the theme for this series is the gritty truth, and that basically means any kind of truth or reality or really harsh, difficult situation that we had to overcome in our lives as women, as artists, as children of God, that revealed God in a different light to us, or just showed us a new dimension of ourselves, or and Him with us. Um, you mentioned like an eating disorder, and I feel like that is something that a lot of women go through, especially women in public eye, like artists. If you would be willing to, again, you could be like, no, thank you, bye. If you would be willing to, I would love to kind of hear your heart and hear your story, and also how it's linked to the EP.
Absolutely, and it would be a joy to share, just because I mean, I feel like the person that I am now versus like the person uh, that like the Jaimie that was dealing with all those mental health issues and like the eating disorder. Like I feel like I'm just so free from the past, and so I
Wow.
just really want to, yeah, I want to share that. And um, yeah, so I think eating disorders are really tricky because a lot of people think that it's just about the food, but it's, for me at least, I can only speak from my personal experience, that it was just how I dealt with I don't know, just feelings of insecurity or like just things not being stable. And yeah, certain like situations and like family relationships just like not going too well. So just yeah, me being like also a perfectionist as well. I just thought that this was one of the ways that I could feel happy, and I thought that I mean, like I remember feeling quite distant from God in university. I think like the first year was just really difficult for me. Um, yeah, so well actually even before that, I know I can pinpoint the exact time I started having like thoughts of like, restricting myself. And I think this was in 10th grade when also my friends were, my girlfriends were also talking about like, like dieting and stuff. Um, and I remember that's when it started in 10th grade because my friends started talking about it. Um, and then in 11th and 12th grade, I just really wanted, I mean, like when, especially as a perfectionist, you really want to get good grades. And um, it's interesting because my parents never pressured me to get good grades. Like they're actually telling me to relax. They're like, you need a chill pill, Jaimie. Like for me, I was like, no, I need to get 100%. I only got a
Yeah.
96. Yeah. So, yeah. So like, it was just like not very, like from that age, like I was just equating my value, even how I thought that God would see me if I attained like a certain number for grades and also with weight as well. And it didn't help that like I mean like I take back it didn't help, but like people don't talk about enough, or at least like when I was in high school, that as a woman your body changes and it's beautiful and natural to like gain some weight,
Yeah.
or like lose a little. It's just like part of life,
Yeah.
your circumstances. And like my body was like going through all these changes, but like I was just like super scared. I was like, oh, like I'm going to like there are a lot of changes going on as well, like in my life. So I thought that, oh, if I control this one thing, that it can make me feel like stable.
Mm.
And so I carried over this sort of this really unhealthy mindset of thinking that, oh, if I get X grade, like this number grade, and like look and appear a certain way, that I'll feel better about myself. But and then first year happened, and like everyone knows that like it's that much harder to get good grades in university. So I just really shut myself from the world and just like only I basically lived at the library, or like was like in my studying in my room. I'm just always trying to attain like again really really good grades. And but when you isolate yourself from community, like that makes everything all the worse.
Mm.
And I remember when it came to second year, I mean second year was a little bit better in terms of me adjusting to university, but it came to the point where I was just again talking about how this affected my creativity. Just like it came to the point where I would only be focused on like making myself as busy as possible to
Mm.
make myself feel better. But I was always on the move, like doing after school activities, taking summer school, volunteering here and there. But I would never be still and spend time with God in the secret place in worship. And I stopped drawing, I stopped dancing because I also had like this foot injury. So yeah, I remember like that summer after finishing my second year. So I was volunteering at this developmental research lab. And the reason why I mentioned that is because, I mean, at the time, psychology was my major. And so interesting because I had learned about eating disorders, and like my colleagues suspected that something was up because like they would always ask me, oh, like, how come you only stand when you're working? Like, you never sit. And I know that like they could sense that something was off, and for me, I would just deny it. Um, and I remember this one particular evening, I was at the research lab and I was working on some like calling cards. And then I realized that I spent like an abnormal amount of time trying to finish a very simple task. Um, and then I just realized how weak I felt and how emotionally unstable I was, and I just like felt like crying all the time. And like in that moment I like broke down, and then I just called my mom and said, Mom, is it okay if I can go home now? And she's like, yeah, it's okay, like I can pick you up. And yeah, so like that was at that point, like I I had dropped 25% of my weight, was just skin and bones.
Wow.
um yeah, sorry, it's a little bit just like going back to that time just like makes me feel really sad. But there's a great ending to the story, because that day I decided I'm going to get help. There's something off. And so I visited, like on campus, the Health and Counseling Center. Really, really, again, really, really, I just felt that God was so present, and I just feel so blessed because it so happened that the female doctor and dietitian that I saw, they were both believing like authentic Christians. So like they could speak into my life and understand the whole spiritual side of things.
Yeah.
And because another thing I forgot to add is that the reason why I had restricted my eating is because I thought that if I fast that I'll get closer to God. So
Yeah.
there's like a fine, like there's a fine line right there. And like yeah, so like that was that was not very, again, like Jesus still loves me even if I don't fast. But
Yeah.
yeah, so it was uh, them formally diagnosing me just helped me to get onto the right path and just take this very seriously. Like, okay, I mean, I really want to, feel better, da da da, do all this stuff to feel better. But no, it's like right now, it's like you need to you need to rest in God. You need to get better, regain your strength. And it was in this time where God started to speak to me in very beautiful ways, and he told me to I felt that he was giving me this challenge to read the whole Bible within that year. And so basically, it was me, regaining healthy weight,
Yeah.
seeing friends again, joining Christian community, and also just like really just diving into his word and returning back to music and art and dance. Um, and so there was one time I was meditating on Song of Songs chapter 2. And actually, I think I have the verse here on my screen. So it says, "My beloved spoke to me and spoke and said to me, 'Arise, my darling, my beautiful one, come with me. See, the winter is past, the rains are over and gone. Flowers appear on the earth, and the season of singing has come. The cooing of doves is heard in our land, and the fig tree forms its early fruit. The blossoming vines spread their fragrance. Arise, come, my darling, my beautiful one, come with me.'" So I was just meditating on that. And I remember I thought it was just really weird how God kept on using the analogy of this bird like staring at something. Um, yeah, and songs, they're always talking about the gaze of a dove. And
Yeah.
yeah, and have you heard of Mike Bickle from Ihop, International House of Prayer? So he
I
does.
know. I know International House of Prayer, but not heard of him.
Yeah, so like Mike Bickle, he's like one of like the, if I'm saying this correctly, he's like the lead, like senior pastor, or anyways. So he has a lot of great sermons on Song of Songs, like this whole series. And I remember like him saying that with the gaze of a dove, when they fix their eyes at something, they will stare intensely at that one thing and not look at anything else. And so here God was asking me to stare intensely at him and at his word. And because like for like when you're recovering from an eating disorder, it's really tricky because I mean, in my case, everyone from church knew about it. I felt really embarrassed how I looked. Like I was, when I went to the swimming pool, like I know that everyone noticed. Um, but here, like God was telling me, yeah, just focus on me. And this even the verse that says the winter is past,
Mm,
I've literally felt cold all the time because of all the weight that I had lost. But God was like, I'm gonna, you're gonna go back to good health. And the rains are over and gone is that season of just like, it was just really often that I would just cry myself to sleep. um but God was calling me into this season of singing. And so, like, quite literally, like 7 years later, like in this present time, I had, I was recording The Way, which is the third track of my EP. And it's so funny because God was bringing all the dove imagery back to me. So the whole month of recording The Way, he sent two doves by the window of my recording, my home studio. Yeah, and it was so like so touching because like I would wake up with literal doves cooing by my bedroom window, and I seriously needed that encouragement because that was the height
yeah.
of my asthma. Like I don't know if you're able to tell like listening to that track, but I'm singing about pain, and I'm literally in pain because like when at least like when I was singing at the time because of my asthma. um yeah, so the
Oh
response that I
wow.
got from like gospel hydration and like even got picked up on
That's what
Fresh
I
Falls.
found it.
Yeah, like that was just like praise God, like like this song was birthed through weakness, and I even sang and recorded it in weakness, but like God is just so good. And just one. Sorry, I'm talking so much, but I'll just like
No,
finish with like a
no, no.
okay. I hope I'm not talking too much, but yeah, like so going back to like that season when I was recovering from my eating disorder and meditating on Song and Songs chapter 2, I just like looked towards my backyard and I saw that there was this white bird flying towards the tallest of trees, and here I'm thinking, I don't think they're supposed to be like, I don't see doves often in my
Yeah.
neighborhood, and um, I don't even know if it's a dove, but it looks like a white bird, so I'm gonna assume it's a dove. And my brother and my dad were standing next to me on the driveway, and so when I pointed it out to them, like I was like, "Look, there's a dove right there!" And then they looked into the towards like the direction I was pointing at, and they couldn't see it. And I said, "Oh, you can't see? It's right there." And as I say, "It's right there," I turn and look at this bird. It opens its wings, and then it closes, and then it disappears. So at this point, I'm looking at my dad, and I'm like, trust me, I'm not lying. I saw this, and then they knew that it was something that God had revealed to me
Yeah.
on the spiritual to confirm that Song of Songs chapter 2 message. So that's what the way is all about.
Oh wow. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, The Way is one of the singles that I think I heard first. I must have heard it on Gospel Hydration, and that was kind of even before you got in touch with us, and then you got in touch with us, and I was like, oh, yeah. That's why
Oh,
I was so
nice.
surprised because I had heard that, but I hadn't heard the full EP. And just to hear the story behind that song, it's just like, wow, that's amazing.
Well, the timing is interesting. Oh wow. Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Amazing Holy Spirit.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Like, there's so many things I want to ask, and like, I know we're slowly like edging towards the end of the interview, but like, there's so many things I like have written down. I'm like, I like the way this has gone though. I feel like this is where it was supposed to be. Um, Thank you for sharing that, first of all, because it's not a small thing. The great thing about this series, and talking about the gritty truths, is we can be honest about like the hardships we've overcome, and we can believe that God had good plans even through those hardships, and the fact that you're able to share that story now from a place of healing will heal other people. So I just want to say thank you.
Mm.
I know it can't have been easy, so thank you for that.
Oh,
Honestly.
my pleasure. Happy to share. Happy to share. God is good.
Honestly, so good. I am wondering if we go down towards I mean, this is mainly about music, but you're an artist through and through of the word. Like, you're into actual visual art. So for those that don't know about you as a visual artist, could you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. So, I haven't really been too active on my artist account, but you can find all my paintings on at Two Distant Seas, which is the title is from Psalm 139, which is again like a psalm that has um, really influenced like me as a person and my art, like even with a handmade card, like that's inspired by Psalm 139.
Oh yeah.
And I'd say like again how I mentioned how God tricked me into doing music, because at a very young age I was so certain that I would be a painter or I'd be some sort of
Mm.
visual artist, or like I really liked Pixar, and like I thought, oh, like I'll be an animator or something. And like I remember just like drawing every single day. And I think now like it's sort of hard, like as a creative person, it's sort of hard to juggle between, music and like practicing for dance, which I haven't done in a long time, and then like practicing for visual arts. But I think it's just very like almost handy to be creative in these different aspects, because one form of creativity can inspire your other form of
Yeah.
creativity. Um, I mean, like for now, like I particularly really enjoy painting with watercolors, and that's also another way for me to spend time with God. And I really love making handy cards. Like I don't know a lot of 26-year-olds that are still, like sending out handy cards, but like for me, like that's just so. I mean, there's so much time and thought that goes into
Yeah.
making a unique design on the card and also a unique message. In terms of the visuals for the EP, so I mean, I have an idea in my head of what I want a
Mm.
music video or a lyric video to look at, but I don't actually know the means to like create it. So my really really talented friend Cindy Jang, she's also an amazing recording artist. So I had seen her lyric videos and music videos, and I just really loved the aesthetic of that. And so yeah, especially going back to Handmade Card, like that song was so like near and dear to my heart that like I knew that I needed to choose an artist who I could really trust with that song. And yeah, so like with Cindy and I, we just I picked this really soft color palette, and because also like I wanted to evoke that sense of purity with what a name means,
Yeah.
and also the season of singing and like the flowers appearing on the earth in Song of Songs chapter 2. I wanted there to be like cherry blossoms, which particularly for me growing up, that has been very like meaningful for me. um yeah, so I really like how Cindy was able to incorporate all of those in that lyric video for Hand Me Card. um I don't know if I answered your
No,
question, but
you did. You did. No, you did. I think it's always interesting because, as Christian creatives, every form of our creation essentially is glorifying God. Like, it doesn't have to be just the
amen.
one thing you do. And I didn't even know you dance as well. So you can praise through dance, you can praise through painting, you can praise through visual arts, you can praise through singing. And you're really blessed that you can do all of that, because some of us are not that. Some of us can't draw sick people, okay? Sick people aren't spiritual. They are not a gift from God, okay? They're terrible. So,
Hey, everyone's creative.
like my skills and my way of giving glory to God, completely different. So it's totally fine.
Oh, you're very talented.
Thank you, girl. Thank you. I don't know how we got here, but I love it. So, like I touched on quite early in this interview, you have quite an interesting style that isn't seen a lot. It's kind of like jazzy. I kept saying lo-fi in my head, which is basically what I describe anything I don't know how to put into any kind of genre. I'm like, oh, it's lo-fi. Um, and you're definitely kind of part of that group of people that are showing us that music doesn't have to be Christian music specifically, and gospel music doesn't have to be the conventional, traditional type of music it's always been. I'm really interested in seeing what you would like to see in the gospel industry, and maybe just tell us a little bit about what the gospel scene is like in Canada.
Yeah. So me being an independent artist, I'd say it's quite difficult, especially living in like being an artist in Mississauga, because I think most of the artistic scene is really big in Toronto. So yeah, which is all like the R&B artists are at. Like I don't know if you've listened to Looney, but she's an incredible R&B artist based in Toronto, and I know that Alessia Cara, I think it's from Brampton. But just goes to say that it's like I feel like us artists are very far and few, um, especially being like a Chinese female jazz artist as well. And you had mentioned lo-fi, and like absolutely, like this EP is a mixture of like jazz, lo-fi, alternative R&B, yeah, and neo soul as well. I'm definitely hoping that just in general with the Christian music industry, that there are going to be artists that are just, they don't compromise their purity, that because like even the Christian music industry can be sort of sketchy at times, and I just I want to see more authentic artists who really are seeking like God is, yeah, with like God's kingdom heart and his kingdom values. Because I just think it's very tempting. I see this even with Christian artists, like gospel artists, that uh it's because you mentioned social media as well, that like social media is an important way to get our message out, but sometimes like the amount of numbers of the followers can really like get to an artist's mind, and unfortunately like affect like your spirit. And yeah, so again, I'm just hoping for artists who are really in tune with God, with his move, especially because I really feel like these are the end times, and so to prepare for Jesus is coming, we like in the arts we really need to reflect that. Um, and I want to see more creativity, because again, like this, like there's nothing wrong with congregational style worship music, but if God is the most creative person we know, why restrict music that's meant to glorify him in a box? So why would we put in a box? So that's what I'm hoping to see.
And I also wanted to see and hear about how you've connected with other people that are doing not necessarily the same thing as you, but that in this game with you. Because, like you mentioned, they're being few and far between of artists in where you are. What's the name of the city again?
Mississauga.
Mississauga. I was like, it's not Toronto because we just said it's not Toronto, but yeah, like you saying there's few and far between artists in there. How have you been able to connect with other artists then in general?
Right. It's so funny. It's very interesting how like when you connect with one creative group that like they will have connections. So you end up like, being connecting with all these different groups. So I've just been really blessed to join this Christian songwriters group since the beginning of the pandemic.
Mm.
So I mean I've been with them for a little bit over a year, but it feels like we're a tight knit family. Um, it's also where I found my producer Steven. Um, yeah, and yeah, there's a Christian songwriters group, and also just participating at Mississauga Arts Council, their open mics. So they've all been virtual, but it's still an awesome way to connect. Like I just made so many friends from
Oh no.
from just like from like sitting like at home like playing guitar from like my laptop. Yeah, it's just been really great to connect that way. And I'm also part of what's called Asian Creative Network on Facebook. So yeah, a lot of great collabs that have happened from there. So yeah, just honestly, like the internet is a great way to connect
It
with
really
more
is.
people.
Yeah.
And even nowadays, like recording music, we just send things back and forth. So yeah, but I'm glad to say that a lot of the friendships that I made have been authentic. So yeah, really blessed.
That's so nice to hear. Oh,
Yeah.
I love authenticity, and I think that as Christians, that really should be what we strive for. We shouldn't have to put some kind of weird front of like a version of ourselves to present the world. So, I really love to hear that. And finally, I'm sad to say finally because I'm actually really enjoying speaking to you, and time has just flown by.
Yeah.
Honestly. But what is the legacy that you want to leave? And I feel like this is a super Christian like question to ask, and you don't honestly have to answer it all Christianese and everything. But what is it that you would love people to leave this interview with, leave after listening to the EP or just listening to your music in general, maybe even just visiting your Instagram? What is the central message that your life just emanates?
Honestly, I love this question, and like it's like the best question to end this interview with. And um, yeah, I've actually my songwriters group has given this question to us, and I think it's really important as artists to reflect on the impact that your music is having. And for me, I just really want people to want more of Jesus when they listen to my songs. Like honestly, just having messages from people around the world, just like there was a girl from France messaging me about she was really touched by the way, and like she was thanking me for sharing my eating disorder testimony. Um, and I want people to listen to my songs and get this sense of God in the room, and particularly feelings of God's peace. And because like whenever I would sit down to write these songs, I would actually be writing from like a mindset of not feeling peaceful, and to have God meeting me in like the songwriting space. And I did also have someone from the States message me saying how when he listens to a Handmade Card, like for him, like he was dealing with like anxiety and just some like mental health things, and like whenever he's told me that whenever he listens to a Handmade Card, he's able to experience that presence of God. And this sounds very cute, but I just want people to like like experience this like a father God hugging them.
Oh.
And it sounds so like cheesy, but like it's so true, because like I don't know, that's how I want to feel, how I feel when I listen to these songs. So just leaving this legacy of authenticity and peace, really, and joy as well. So yeah.
And how can we keep up with you, Jaimie? Like, it sounds like we've got so much more to come. And the fact that you had to pick from like 15 of other songs to put in the EP, there's definitely something coming. How can we make sure that we're, on the train?
Right. I am cooking up something, but yeah. So follow me on Spotify. You can search my first and last name. Um, And as Paula mentioned, it's 2 eyes around the M. And yeah, follow me on social media at Jaimie Poon Music. And yeah, there will be more to come. I'm just currently in the cooking process.
And we don't want to rush that. You don't want to rush that.
Yeah, you can't rush good art.
Not rush good art. Thank you so much, Jaimie, for your time. Honestly, it means so much. And I know that everyone listening to this has just been blessed and just thought, have got to see more about you that they never, knew before. And all these songs that we're listening to, there's stories behind them, there's journeys behind them, there's healing behind them, there's overcoming situations behind them. And being able to learn that has just been honestly a privilege. And I just appreciate you for sharing them and giving us a bit of your heart. So thank you for your time. Hi guys, I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you did, make sure to leave a like rating wherever you're listening to this and to follow us on Instagram at SheHH Podcast.